Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm the founder of FemPeak, a platform where visionary women come to gain live access to global leaders, learn about the macroeconomic landscape, and stay ahead of the curve. This year, I plan to spend more time covering topics around Web3, decentralization, crypto, NFTs, and the metaverse. I've been interested in the blockchain space since 2018 and began buying and trading crypto quietly since early 2021. And that was in the heat of the pandemic, as I was increasingly concerned about the economic status of the world. Fast forward to now, and I'm actively learning and educating everyone around me about the next generation of the internet and the role that cryptocurrencies and NFTs will play in it. That's what I will be discussing with my guest on today's podcast, Shira Stember, COO of Snickerdoodle, a cool startup working on the cross-section of NFTs and the future of ownership. They're using blockchain technology to build a data economy that protects user privacy and distributes value to all stakeholders, including the data owners. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Shira Stember. When we were having the conversation about you speaking on some of our events, I remember getting really into what you were talking about. It was so interesting. So let's rewind a little for people who don't know anything about you and the background of why you're here. Can you talk a little bit about who you are, the company you work with, and the things that you are interested in and you're working on right now?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Shira Stember. I'm currently the COO at Snickerdoodle Labs. We're a startup. We incorporated in May of this year. We closed our initial funding round, our seed round, in June. And we're inching towards closing our next round of financing. And really, for Snickerdoodle, we're really thinking about how can we think differently about how the internet works today. So we know that data is an extremely valuable resource, but currently individuals don't have control over their data. The experience now is you go on a website, you accept cookies, which just gives you a better experience, but you are not aware of what's being tracked, and your behaviors and the data you're creating and who you are is exposed and being used by the companies that you're agreeing to get those cookies. And so, there's been a lot of recent news stories. I mean, and this I think has probably been something that has been thought about for a very long time around how there's just a lack of trust in terms of not knowing where your information is going. And so we really feel like there's an opportunity to leverage NFTs in a way for individuals to own, control, use, and monetize their data. So really, it's thinking about shifting data ownership away from companies to individuals to allow individuals to have privacy and control over the content or data that they're creating. So every individual really is a content owner and should be able to control that content that they're creating, which is their data. But also if we're creating tools to allow this to happen, but if individuals are given the proper tools, that there's an opportunity to really monetize their data in a way that's of interest to them so they can opt into different things. For example, you could choose to share something with one party and share something else with another. You have ultimate control. You would understand what those rewards are and how you would be compensated. But really, there's an opportunity also for businesses. It's not just about disrupting an industry. It's about really realigning incentives. So by doing that and protecting data, have individuals control, but sharing what they want and knowing what that looks like, it allows businesses and enterprises to think differently about their advertising and marketing structures. It could be much more hyper-targeted, and also because they wouldn't necessarily need to take ownership of individuals' data, there's a huge privacy regulation component that can be solved using NFTs. And that's really what we're doing at Snickerdoodle. In terms of my background, what I'm doing here. So, we're very much a startup. So it's very much startup vibes. It's all hands on deck. Everybody, no one's been in these roles before. The business hasn't existed that long. But really what I feel like I do every day is just work to build the company I've always wanted to work at. So, and really to me, where that starts is just building a team and a culture that I'm proud of every day. That the choices we're making as it relates to our finances, being responsible with every dollar that comes in and thoughtful about that now and giving us, space to grow. but also around the people, the team, the hiring practices, and the way in which we work together. So wanting to just set a tone for, how I want to go to work every day. And really, I don't even think of it as work. I think of it as like, we're here just like really wanting to make this happen because we all believe in it and we're working together. And that's super inspiring to like have so much passion behind it. But prior to this, I was working at Citibank on the global brand team focused on brand innovation. And I think there are a lot of, I learned a lot about just like how we can think differently about the tools and resources we have, how we can be more creative. Like innovation really flourishes when there's some constraint put in place because you're forced to be creative. Like if you had everything at your disposal to do everything and it was like unlimited, you can really get kind of like lost in the potential and all the different choices you can make. But when there's some sort of constraint, whether it be financial or time or, there's many different things, that's really where it gets interesting. And really the like key to that is just people wanting to work together, being open and transparent, building a culture of trust, and TBD on like how that's working. I think it's working well. And you can ask some of the other people on the team, but like really it's just about keeping everybody in the know, giving everybody an opportunity to share their ideas, to recognizing that everybody has value to add to what we're doing. There's so much that still needs to be defined and creative work that needs to go into our product that we really just need add in kind of like their ideas of where this could go. Like, what do they want this to be? Like everybody has, an ownership stake. And so that's kind of the background. I learned a lot of that from Citi and just trying to navigate a corporate environment and really trying to be creative about that. But the other component is also having some social impact work tied into it. So it's not, this is like our philanthropic arm and this is our for-profit arm, but like really like it's all working together. It should be all working together. It's not one or the other. It's both at the same time, always thinking about it, always wanting to like be collaborative and move things forward in a way that's positive for like all stakeholders, whether it's, employees, investors, future customers, clients, my neighbors, my community, my cities, country, like the world, the earth. Just like how can we feel like we're, truly being good corporate citizens? And so learned a lot of that from Citi. Prior to working at Citi, I was home with my kids for 5 years. So I have 3 kids. And I think like I say, like 2.5 of those years were like amazing. And 2.5 of those years were really hard just because it's a really hard job. And I was trying to figure out kind of what my next move is professionally and trying to navigate that was really hard. I can get into that more later if you want, but that's like definitely a really tough spot. Yeah.
I think that's an important thing for, when we talk about women in business and technology, there's always that component of, especially for those who have children. It's fascinating to me, the differences in like so many women go to have children and then they never come back. And that's pretty sad. And it's sad for the bigger picture of, the business impact, but, it may be a good choice for them. So it's a difficult one. Okay, so we will get into that, but let's now talk a little bit about the core business, like what you said about, so you're going to be using NFTs to empower people who spend time on the web to monetize and take control of their data. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like there's quite a lot to unpack there because NFTs are so new, Web3, all these, there's so many new things to get your head around. So most people right now think of NFTs as some JPEG that they are spending a lot of ETH on. So let's take a step back for people who don't know, who are like getting into this for the first time. So let's start by, what are NFTs, non-fungible tokens? What are they from your perspective? Other than what people generally know of the JPEGs pixelated that cost a lot of money. So can you define what are NFTs? And then what role do you see? What are some of the roles that you will see they will play in this decade, as in this new era of business and technology?
Okay, so what are NFTs? NFTs are non-fungible tokens.
And really what that means is that there's scarcity. You can't exchange them. It's not like where if you had a $1 bill and a $1 bill, it doesn't matter which $1 bill you have. Non-fungible tokens means that there's something unique here and something unique here, and you can't necessarily exchange them one for one. So the other thing that, to me, what becomes really interesting around, blockchain is the provenance of it. So being able to see the history, and I'll get to why that makes sense for our business, is being able to see the history and track it. And I think that becomes important, at least in this like initial use case when people are thinking about NFTs as art or digital collectibles. It really started as this like academic exercise, which to me became compelling because of the provenance component. Being able to like trace back the history and have it be verified on the blockchain of a digital art piece to the original creator. And, even in the concept of NFTs, there's smart contracts, which will allow you to program within the NFT what the royalties are. So if I'm an artist, I create some digital art, I create it as an NFT, I can be compensated on the first sale. I can also have it programmed so in any secondary or third or fourth or fifth sale, I can also be compensated because that's built into the contract. That's, I think, probably like the use case that like hooked me, where I was like, okay, well, that's really cool because I'm into artists being compensated for their work, right? Like I can relate to that. And, my background is not in blockchain or NFTs. So the last 7 months has truly just been like a learning experience, both just learning so much from Jonathan and Alex and Atticus on the Snickerdoodle team and, the rest of the team and the advisors, but also just like of personal interest. There's just a lot of cool stuff going on. And so really just spending so much time reading and digging into certain things. But I think that was probably the first thing I thought about where I was like, okay, I like that. That makes sense to me. I want to support artists in that way. And it also makes you think like, okay, well, the current process in like, normal world where an artist sells their physical piece of art and then that's it, right? That feels like kind of a bummer now. What if they sold it because they needed something early on, just whatever. So like, I like bought into that use case and I felt like that was like a good shift and a productive shift and a positive shift in like how our world works. That was like my first hook. But like really how we're thinking about NFTs is like still being able to think about the like fundamental technology, but it's not about digital collectibles or art for us. It's truly about the tech and being able to demonstrate ownership and having control and ownership over certain pieces of content. And content really for us is data, is your identity, is who you are, it's how you're behaving. And you should be able to control what you share and when you share it. And by having ownership over something and having ownership over that data and content, this technology allows you to do that in a safe and secure and private way. The best example that also made sense to me, kind of like in having like an analogy to like, our current world is you go to a bar, they want to know, at least in the States, that you're over 21. They don't care really what your name is. They don't care where you're from. They don't even really care. I mean, they don't care. They shouldn't care what you look like. Like they don't even care what kind of form of identification they're showing. All they want to know is that you're over 21. But when you show your license or a passport, you're exposing to whomever you're showing it to a lot more information than you need to. And so for us, we're thinking about NFTs in a way where like if the bar or restaurant wants to know you're over 21, they can get a verification that says, yes, Shira is over 21, she can enter. They don't need to know anything else. And I can share that information with the bar. So like it's allowing like to have these like very specific use cases to share things, to get things that you want, to gain access to things that you want. And so when we think about compensation as it relates to sharing your data and how NFTs could be used, it's not just to get a digital collectible or a JPEG or a picture of a cool cat. I mean, those are cool things too, but like really it's like a much more future focused angle in that like you can have access to things. You can become part of a community if you want to buy this NFT, it will give you access to this community, whether it's on Discord or in real life. It will allow you to do certain things. It becomes this like single sign-on control where you're sharing and interacting in a digital way, but it's private and you understand what you're doing and what you're getting for it. And so you have so much more control. It's just a very different mindset than how we experience the internet today. And that, I think, is what is really exciting to me. There's still so much to explore and create and build. And a lot of what we're doing at Snickerdoodle is based on being collaborative and having partnerships and integrating with other players in the space. And so, our roadmap, like, we're really excited, like, stay tuned in Q1. We're like really looking forward to having some great MVP launches, but like a lot of this is dependent on like what are the needs of our partners, what is their community saying, like that will dictate kind of like our order of how we're rolling out certain things, because it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to take a lot of integration and collaboration. And I think that also is just like a fundamental component of the industry that I'm really excited about, that everybody feels collaborative, it feels cooperative, because there's so much opportunity to create and build. It's kind of like, okay, if everybody's here and into it and they believe in like at least the potential of the tech, that's like really good vibes. And let's figure out ways for us to support each other. How could what we're doing at Snickerdoodle support another partner? How could another partner support us? Let's experiment, let's innovate, let's try some things. If it doesn't work, no problem. Let's not do that again. Let's just try something else. That to me is really exciting. So that's that's like, I think to me, like how I learned about NFTs, and feels like a starting point to understand what this is, but it's endlessly creative of what it could be, at least in my perspective.
Yeah, no, super interesting. So I have a few questions. So one of the things I made the note here, you said that let's go to the example of the age confirmation thing. I understand that you don't need to show more data than that they need to only be able to verify and that you're 21 or over. My worry with this type of fractionalization of data is the loss of context. I can see this playing in two ways or in multiple ways. It's like anything else. It's always like you gain something, you lose something. It's always like that with technology, right? With everything in life. My worry is that it can really help something like machine learning to fractionalize data, because it will enable access to different parts of the data, and then it enables the learning to happen in a way that may be less complex than if you had a ton of different things going on. However, the real world is very complex. I studied complexity theory when I was doing my master's, and I'm super interested in it. And I think I'm worried about one of the ways in which we may potentially end up losing context. And one of the things that makes us human, I wrote a book called Career Fear and How to Beat It, and it's about the future of work. And in that book, there's a chapter on contextual creativity, and where in that chapter, I'm explaining one of the ways that we are different from machines, and one of the ways that humans can still have something to offer in an age where machines are doing everything, is our ability to see the full context and to draw conclusions and create stories based on those contexts. So I just found it a bit alarming thinking of the loss of context there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
A lot of my day when I'm talking to my team is like, what could go wrong, right? Like, how could this be misused? what are our standards as an organization for what we want to do and the decisions we're making. I don't have a background in ethical AI or machine learning, but I do have standards that I believe I want to be associated with just as a human, and how we should treat others and how we should behave as humans to each other, and wanting to be, enter into things with positive intentions and try to leave places better than how we found them, and like just having this like very optimistic, positive take on how I want to live my life in my community in real life, but also what I want for how our products are built. And so a lot of how, like, it's always like, well, how could this be misused, right? This is new. We're making choices for how this tech is building, and kind of what our standards are as an organization. And so in terms of having context, right now, blockchain and crypto, it's totally anonymous, but it's all open. I think that it's more providing more context and more, it's not to allow people to hide behind their identity and operate or misuse in some way. It's just trying to have an experience that actually is more thoughtful, that is more verified and validated. And there's a lot of talk in the space around like having like a trustless environment, and trustless, really, it needs like a rebrand, but like ultimately like trustless is like at a higher level than just saying like, you can trust us, we're good people. Like trustless means that like trust is no longer part of the conversation
Equation.
because it's fully embedded in the tech. And if you believe in the tech and how it operates, like you don't even have to think like, oh, is this like a trustworthy interaction? Like that's just how it works now. I like my depth of understanding of like the complexity of AI, machine learning, and how you would fragment the data, and you're concerned about context. Like I just like feel like I like can like scratch the surface there, but I'm less concerned about that because I think ultimately we're just trying to have a better experience between humans and wanting to be more connected cross border. So like crypto and blockchain, this is like global. This is like trying to have this like universal language and economy for us to all connect and to provide opportunities for people in ways that didn't exist before. It's still super early. There's still so much onboarding of people that need to come into space to add in their ideas and their thoughts. But like, just the vibe of like, we need everybody, like all hands on deck. Like you have a tech experience, great. You don't, great. Like everybody needs to come in, provide their ideas around what this could look like. But like, I don't really think of it as, trying to like fragment or segment, and I'm not as worried about the loss of context. I think that it's the opposite to some extent. I think it will just like allow for like a more seamless experience that I think, in my perspective, will allow for more creativity and more context and more innovation.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm super interested in this space. I always consider myself somebody who is pro technology, but at the same time, as a tech philosopher, I have to always think about how it could, not necessarily how it could go wrong, because going wrong is a relative term. It could go wrong for certain people at certain times, but on for example, you could say that the invention of the fueling mill, which was like a machine where they put it into the water in the river, and it would basically go around and around with the power of the water, and then it would wash people's clothes, right? And that replaced people going into the river to actually wash clothes with their feet, right? So you could say that went wrong for the people who lost their jobs, who made money from washing other people's clothes. But it was a giant step towards today's washing machine, right? Right. Yeah. So what my kind of concern is, and what I'm looking at is, I can see the bigger picture of where that's going, and the washing machine. And I'm so happy that I have a washing machine. But at the same time, I call myself a transition architect, as like somebody who is able to see what happens during this transition and how many people will be affected and how they will be affected. And, and to make sure that people understand I'm not necessarily saying that we can solve all those things, but I want to make sure that people understand where we're going and they make an active stance and become an active participant, so that they're not a passive observer. We have that opportunity more so now as we are going to Web3 than we did with Web2, because with Web2 it was really a bunch of people who were building those, and then there were a bunch of big corporations that became the founders and then the owners of all that data. Whereas with Web3, we have an opportunity, and I just want people to not sort of sit back and watch, but actually try and take a active stance and think about what this means, like, tokenization of our data, fractionalization of our data, and and what that means.
Just really quickly, I mean, I think like I haven't read your book, but now I'm like very curious, because like I think the future of work conversation becomes really interesting. There's always like this fear that like robots are going to take all of our jobs and we're going to be totally useless, like wandering around with like no passion or mission or whatever. But like that's not how I see it at all. It's really just like a shift. Like if we can improve it, then it unlocks more. Like there's more questions now unlocked. Like I have more questions now that I've spent time in the space than I did when I first started. And I had a lot
of questions. But that's because you took an active stance. You became part of. So what I talk about in my book is my worry is for the 90% of people that I think are not going to. If you think about what happened during the COVID, during the pandemic, the first week of the lockdown, Netflix subscriptions went up by several million, and that goes to show the majority of people are going to use their time, to just be observers, like I don't want to get my education about artificial intelligence from a Netflix TV series, like was that Black Mirror or whatever. I didn't even watch it. I haven't watched Netflix for more than 2 years now, or like Netflix, no TV series, no movies, nothing. So I'm on an abstinence from entertainment right now. But what I'm trying to say, and okay, I know that I'm the extreme, right? I'm not saying everybody needs to be that extreme, but my point is that 90% of people are likely to not have much to do. Right now there are about 11 million job opportunities in technical areas that there are not enough people for it. And by 2030 we are looking at around 70-80 million these types of opportunities that we are not going to have enough people to fill, right? So I guess I just want to throw in those thoughts about the loss of context, one of the things that I talk about in the book is that you need to have several technical skills, and then in addition to that you then need to develop these human skills that I call like critical thinking, contextual creativity, emotional intelligence, and mindfulness. And by mindfulness, I don't mean sitting there meditating. I mean active participation, like being present, right? So let's go back to the NFTs, because I have a lot of questions around that. So tell me a little bit more about how does your data become NFT? And how do you then take control of it? Before you start talking on that, I wrote an article about COVID-19 and the future of business technology and democracy. And in that article, I gave this example of how our data are being used. So it's kind of like we all have an oil well in the backyard, and that's our data. And we don't know how to mine it ourselves, okay? And then Zuck comes and says, you know what, I see that you have this oil in your backyard. Let me help you mine it, and I will give you something for it, right? And then he takes our oil, mines it, and then sells it, right? And then we get like the equivalent of maybe some bread. Whereas, so when you talk about NFTs and being able to, monetize your data and have ownership, it makes me think like that we are going away from that model of giving our oil to Zuck and Larry, and all these guys, and say, no, thank you, I can mine my own oil. Is it like that?
Yes.
Okay.
So like data is like the most valuable asset. That's why those companies are so successful, is because they have access to all of that data. So we really are thinking about a shift in ownership of that data. That's exactly what Snickerdoodle is doing. We're building the tools to allow you to do that. So like both to be able to, think about, like, it's not like an active thing where an individual would need to say like, I need to create an NFT for my data. Like from my perspective, what we're doing at Snickerdoodle, a lot of it is behind the scenes. Your experience of the internet today is still your experience of the internet. It just will have other additional tools that will allow you to do these things, that will allow you to feel protected and have ownership and see the data you're creating and see where it's sharing and see what kind of rewards or compensation or connections you can make by sharing that data. The intention is really to have a user experience that is clean and simple and easily understood. There's a lot of things about the digital experience today that are amazing, right? Like just we're able to do this, right? Like that I'm able to work all day long from my kitchen and be as productive and effective and have all the tools I need. I don't, like, if I wanted to write something with a pen, like I don't even know where a pen is. I don't need a pen, right? So there's a lot about like what we're doing today that is amazing. It's not trying to transform our experience today into something that is totally new. Like maybe it goes there, but that's, our vision isn't this like dramatic, crazy new experience where everybody has to fully understand the back end technology of what this all is and NFTs and all of that. It really is, that's really the explanation we have to share with people in the space now, to share with our investors of what we're doing, because there's a need to understand that like fundamental technology in order to demonstrate what our vision is for the user experience on the road. But for a user who's like onboarding, like their experience is gonna be like, I'm gonna have a Snickerdoodle account that I own. I will be able to see clearly like all the data I have. I'll be able to easily say like, yes, I want to share that. Yes, this is where I want to share. Like, obviously that's like very MVP first stage. Like we have like a more complex structure that we're building towards, but there isn't a need for like for this like depth of tech knowledge in order to do what we're talking about in terms of the data ownership and the privacy and the control and the monetization of data. Like all of that is really behind the scenes. Like really what we're doing is just creating the tools to make it easy for individuals to do that. And so just like connecting this point to the last conversation around the future of work, like yeah, wonderful to have tech skills. Like we need more people with, tech skills, but like tech skills is really also just like communication. It's a way of thinking. It's a point of view on the world. It's a vision. And like, from my perspective, what's truly needed in the space right now is like, we need people with like a lot of like communication skills. We need people to be able to like keep trying to explain this technology in a way that allows people to understand it, that it gives people an opportunity to hook in, that inspires them. That's like that takes them away from just like, I guess, watching Netflix all day and motivates them to be like, wow, like I could do that. That's missing. I feel like I could really make an impact here. Like, where can I offer my skills? Like, where can I start? How, like, what question, like, just start asking questions, just start reaching out. Like, there's so much work to be done. And a lot of it is not necessarily around just the tech. Like, that's obviously,
that's the contextual creativity. That's right. What, like, it's not the understanding.
We need people, yeah, to like bring it in and speak in a language that is universally understood, like that makes sense, that resonates, that allows people to click. I think even in talking to friends and family, when I first started with Snickerdoodle, it was like, I kept trying to like, I was like, how am I getting at this? How do I boil down what I'm doing in like a quick, succinct way? It's really hard. It's really complex. and it's different for people. So it's kind of just like, keep trying. But at some point, we're going to keep trying and experimenting, and we're going to get to a way of communicating that's going to be like, I understand what this is. I really like it. I want to be a part of it. How can I help move it forward? And so like, there's a huge opportunity also to like think along those lines outside of tech.
Yeah. Okay. No, super interesting. So you said that you didn't have a background in it. How long did it take you to really get your head around the technology?
I don't think I have my head around the technology. It's like, I don't think I'll
you
ever
can't
have
like I don't think you
right?
can
Like,
ever, like, because it's moving so fast.
It's like, that's not even like a goal, because
no, like you learn, like I learn every single day, and it's
yeah,
and then
like,
a new layer opens, and then you
yeah, exactly. It's like, it's endless. To me, that feels like really fun and exciting, because like, you just kind of have to settle into it. Like, I know as much as I know, but also it's a confidence in like saying, I also have like a lot of questions. And if there are a lot of questions that are bubbling up, that just means that I actually am pushing things forward, that I do have some level of expertise. Maybe like my levels can keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper, but just being able to generate a question and say like, how does this work? What does this mean? What's the like nuance to this? Like, how could this go wrong? How could this be misused? What are the choices we need to make? What are the standards that are part of like some sort of regulation as it relates to privacy, but like also, what are our standards as an organization? Like, where do we draw the line? What makes sense to us? How do we want to like, there's an endless amount of questions. Like, so I don't think I'm ever going to have my brain wrapped around it, because it's constantly evolving. I'm also super inspired by that. That's really fun. And also just, it allows everybody to just like be in it, right? So there's so many different things going on. Anybody could start at any point, and I could be like, whoa, what is this? I've never seen this before. This is really interesting. Could this, if this connected with this, is there something there? Are these dots connecting? Should they connect? Can I help them connect? Even if it's not specifically related to Snickerdoodle, it's kind of just like, I see things happening and I want things to get together, and that feels really cool. But when did it click? So Mike Tedasco, who's an advisor at Snickerdoodle, he is head of innovation at PayPal. He's been a mentor in my network for a number of years. And he reached out early this year and said, would you ever want to join a blockchain startup? These are like reasonable, good blockchain people. Like, what do you think? And I was like, I don't really know that much about blockchain. I mean, I've, as much as any normal person, like I've read it a little bit, but what could I do here? And I was like, can you just send me some podcast or articles to help, narrow down what's going on into like what you think the team is thinking about. And I'll tell you if I think it's interesting. And I just like had like a whole weekend of like binging like podcasts, reading articles.
And what was the one that really kind of hit home?
There's so many. I mean, like Chris Dixon, who's a partner at Andreessen, is on the crypto team, just like breaks things down in a way where it's like that like brain explosion emoji, and it's like over and over and over again, where it's just a way of thinking about how the world can work, right? So if you have a desire to have an impact and feel like you're moving things forward in a positive way, for yourself, like however big you want that to be, like you can apply that thinking in whatever magnitude. And that's how he's approaching this. And, I listened to one of those podcasts and I was like, I mean, is this what this could be? Like, it just was like a flood of like, is this direction? Is this possible? Is somebody already doing this? Like, am I having new thoughts, or is this already happening? Like, could this happen? It's like, and then it was just like talking to the team like that, like just asking a lot of those questions. And I think it's just, having somebody come in, like even now, if somebody were to approach me with like a bunch of questions, 99% of the time, I have never thought of those questions. And that's so valuable, right? Like, let's have that conversation. That's so interesting. Why do you think that? What has your experience been that has like caused you to then have that question? Like, how could this be incorporated? Like, that's the need to like have all of these like diverse perspectives and have a lot of different people from a lot of different places, not necessarily like, it doesn't always have to be diversity of background. It's just like, you're a different person than me and you're thinking about things differently. And how could that help make this go in a direction that feels really good for both of us?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, I like went down the rabbit hole, but like every day I like could get sucked into like Twitter being like, wait, what's going on? Like, what are these people doing? Like, how is this different from this? Like, what does this new chain do? What's this function out? Like, I mean, it's endless. Our office is closed next week. And my plan is to just like find some cool stuff that, you know, sparks my attention and just like dig in and try to like play. And that's really fun. So.
Yeah, I know. It's there's so much going on, and I mean I don't need any entertainment because I just consume so much, so many books, so many podcasts about the topics that we're discussing. No, super interesting. Okay, so now last question. Let's talk a little bit about your journey as a mother, coming, taking a break, then coming back. How did you find your way back into where? So you said that prior to City, you had the 5-year off, right? Yeah. So what were you doing before that?
Yeah. So I've been in New York for like almost 18 years. I came here after college for work. I went to business school at NYU and then was working at American Express. I started out as a finance intern in it was called American Express Interactive, a digital department, then moved into marketing. Worked on the Costco card when it was with American Express and in their small business division. So like very corporate, like it was a great experience, but like while I was there, went on 2 maternity leaves. I had 2 kids and it was just, I mean, it's hard to try to like balance all of that. And I felt like I really wanted to be with them. And I felt lucky that I have a partner that supported that. And the intention wasn't to, really take 5 years. The intention was to just spend time with them and feel good about that and enjoy those moments and appreciate the time with the kids. And then I had another kid. So I have 3 kids. And then it was like, I was just in like, I mean, it's just, and they're all really close together and it's just a lot of work. It's so much work. And so 2.5 years around 2.5 years, I was kind of like, I need to figure out, like, do I go back part-time somewhere? What am I going to do? Like, I don't want too much time to go by because I don't want to, I still was still very close with my friends and network from business school and would see what they were doing and was still very much inspired by the work they were doing. And I really felt like there was something, I really just wanted to feel productive. I felt like I could do more. So then I started just doing like a lot of volunteer work, did some like consulting projects. And I was like, I really just want to find something where it feels like I'm really having an impact. And I don't just want, it's not just to have a job. It's to really like feel like I'm making a difference somewhere, to really feel like I'm contributing. And that I'm excited about. If I'm, it's a lot of logistics to figure out how to like transition out of that. And it was really hard. It's really hard. What's the right role? Like, how is this all going to work? Like, how am I going to commute? How am I going to navigate like childcare? And it's complicated. And there are some like really hard, dark moments. Like, why isn't this working? Like, what am I looking for? Like, how should I readjust? Like, what's my narrative? How do I explain this? Like, and I think I started off trying to shield it a little bit. Like, no, I've actually been really productive. Like, I was involved in the PTA. And then at some point I was just like, this is the hardest job I've ever had. And there's I'm proud and lucky that I'm able to have a family and live in New York and have a supportive partner. And I think I am a better person in the way I think and how I operate. And I think as a mother, it starts to become, you need to be really efficient and you need to see any roadblock up ahead and try to avoid it. And I mean, that way of thinking it's a skill. It's a skill and it's a huge part of what I do every single day. I move things out of the way. I see things that the rest of the team doesn't see. I need to stay ahead of them as much as I can to allow them to build the product and the tech and to fundraise and to be able to do that as fast as they can without any of the roadblocks that, you would see, building a startup.
Yeah.
And so that way of thinking is 100% because I was a mother. 100%. I feel it. I know how I thought before that, and I know how I think now, and it's a different way. And so, yeah, so it was hard, but I think it also just, it's extremely valuable experience that, I'm proud of, and I openly talk about, and I love talking about, because I think it just shows resilience, and, happy to talk to anybody about that, but it is also really challenging. So, talking to people and being a mentor to others who are thinking about how does this going to work for me? Do I take time off? I really say you should really think about that, because it's really hard to get back. It's really hard to navigate out of it, because our society isn't fully set up to make it easy for you to do that.
I'd love to do a session on FemPeak just on that, because I think that's such an interesting topic. And so, okay. No, I am so happy that you did come back, because your skills, your abilities, as a mother, as somebody who has had to, like you say, think, of so many things ahead of the game. Those are really important in the tech environment and in a tech startup. So I'm sure that your colleagues really appreciate that too. That's why they offered you that, right? And they were like, would you like to come and join? So people can see that. So I'm so glad that you did come back. And I think this is a good place to bring the conversation to an end, because we leave it on a positive note that, yes, it's hard, it's doable. It's not for everybody. I decided not to have children. I just can't do it. I don't know how you do it. I can't. I'm one person with 2 kittens. The kittens are so much work. I don't know how you do it with children. It's very, very hard. I couldn't do it. But I take my hats off to you and anybody else who can do it. Thank you so much. That was really inspiring, and I'm sure people would really enjoy it as well.
Thank you so much. It was really nice chatting with you. Happy to talk about that more. If it could provide any sort of guidance or value to anybody else, that just makes me feel good, and happy to do that as much as possible. Of course.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Shira Stember. Be sure to check out Snickerdoodlelab.io to learn more about what they're up to. Subscribe to the Somi Arian podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. Finally, if you're not yet a member of FemPeak, head over to fempeak.ai, register, and join a community that actively supports women's professional growth.